Okay. I forgot to start the recording, so now it's started. What I wanted to say, as I mentioned before, I had to restart. We're going to finish. We're going to talk a little bit of review of chapter 9. We're going to have an introduction to chapter 10 and begin chapter 10. And a reason that you need an introduction to chapter 10 is 7, 8, and 9, chapter 7, 8, and 9 are really a unit that stand not by themselves, but as a unit dealing with the Nefesh HaBahamit, the Nefesh HaLokit. We were introduced to the idea of Itchapcha and Itkafia, where the concept of suppressing versus transformation, the location of the two different souls, what each one has as their goal. And that was really that section. Chapter 10 begins its own little standalone piece. We're going to get to that. But before we do, what I want to do now is to share with you a 5-minute clip from the same gentleman who we've heard from before. And I just happen to like the way that he does his summaries. So let's, what was it, Control Shift? Is Control Click, a Control Click. There we go.
The mind.
Can we get it to the beginning? Make it large. Okay.
Welcome back to Tanya in Less Than 5. The last 2 days we've been studying chapter 9. Having established in chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 the anatomy of the godly soul and the world in which it lives, divine wisdom and Torah, divine commandments and mitzvahs, and then having established in chapters 6, 7, and 8 the animal soul / natural soul's world, what it wants, what it's made up of, its desires, its behaviors, its thought, its speech, its action. Now in chapter 9, the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss what these two souls want from me in my body and what they want out of my experience living here in this world. The godly soul, considering that it is about pursuit of the truth of God Himself, its base of operations is the mind. And from there, it desires that the entirety of the body, every thought, speech, or action, every feeling I have, every idea I conceive of, should be nothing other than an expression of its attachment to God. That's what it would like from me. The natural soul, the animal soul, who is all motivated by the self as a biological creature, its base of operations is in the heart. Starts off with, how do I feel? What do I love? What makes me scared? And its desire is the exact reverse of the godly soul. It wants every experience I have, every thought, speech, action, every part of my body should be nothing other than the expression of self-preservation. And there's the competition. The godly soul in the mind, wanting all of my experiences to be for God, and the animal soul in the heart, wanting all of my experiences to be about me. The parable the Alter Rebbe uses is two kings competing for control over one city, each king wanting the entire city to be run in accordance with its will, the body being the city, and these two souls being the two kings competing for dominion over my body. The desire that these two souls have is not simply that my body should function according to its desire, but even more than that, it would want the other soul to be in the service of Him. Meaning, the animal soul, with all of the energy and drive and even lust that it brings, its capacity for desire, and the godly soul's vision of life, that passion will be redirected toward God. And for the animal soul, it's the reverse. Then the Alter Rebbe concludes the chapter with a line that is absolutely incredible. He says, the animal soul is there to get me to be self-serving, but that's not the end. That's only the means. What it truly wants is that I overpower it. And he tells us to think of a parable given in the Zohar of a king who wants to test and prove the character of his only son. So he hires a professional woman to seduce this prince. And the intention is obviously that the prince demonstrate his character and overcome. Now this woman, who is trying her hardest to seduce the prince, what does she truly want? She also wants that the king be successful. And therefore, she also wants that the prince not give in to her, even though here she is trying her best to seduce him. And the same thing is true of the animal soul. Even as it tries to get me to be selfish, deep down, it's only serving God. And it wants me to overpower it. So when I give in to my animal soul's desire and say, God forbid I do a sin, my animal soul himself turns around to me and says, again you failed. Come on, you were supposed to overpower me. The takeaway from all of this is to remember that every part of my experience is all created by God to fulfill their specific purpose. The godly soul, to bring godliness into my life, and the animal soul is also in the service of God so that I overpower it. Knowing the animal soul's secret, just knowing it alone, is itself enough to give me strength to overpower anything the animal soul puts in my direction. Looking forward to seeing you after we conclude chapter 10.
All right. Let's close that. And let's go back to here. Okay. How come I don't see anybody? That's interesting. Oh, there we go. I hit the wrong button, I guess, here. Okay. So first, I love the way he summarizes things. And that last point was critically important. It's important for now, but it's important for down the road, that we think in terms of that the godly soul, the nefesh elokit, is there to make us get closer to God. The nefesh bahamit is to kind of make us more, involved in the worldly matters. We know that there's this tug of war. There's this desire of one to overpower the other, but that ultimately the nefesh bahamit, which we said last week in the end of the chapter, wants to lose that battle, because it wants also that we should serve Hashem. It wants to be vanquished. Now, if you remember, when we started the book, I said to you that there are going to be topics, there are going to be things that are going to mention in the introduction to the book, the first chapter of the book, that it's going to take a long time until we actually truly start to understand what we're talking about when we use certain terms. So I want to go back and put on the screen not the first, but some of the first few lines in the first chapter of Tanya. I'm gonna read them. I'm gonna translate them like I did last time, and then give you a couple of psukim. And with all that, we'll be able to start looking at the next chapter in Tanya. But the matter is as follows. The Balatanya tells us that he quotes a Gemara that there are 5 divisions of people, of levels of serving God. Tzaddik v'tovlo. Now, normally I'm just going to translate it word by word. Tzaddik, for whom things are good. Tzaddik v'ralo, a tzaddik for whom things are not good. Rasha v'tovlo, an evil person for whom things are good. Rasha v'ralo, an evil person for whom things are bad. Ubenoni, and a middle ground, Benoni. Peshubi Gemara, and the Gemara explained, Tzaddik v'tovlo, what does it mean at tzaddik for things are good? Tzaddik gamur is a complete tzaddik. Tzaddik v'ralo, but a tzaddik things are bad for him, is called tzaddik sheino gamur. It's an incomplete tzaddik. And we said, yes, it's very understandable that this is inexplicable. This is not understandable in its original fashion, the way he quotes the Gemara. What does it mean? So let's back up a second. In normal parlance, when we talk about the topic of tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo, has a completely different meaning. It usually is referring to the concept of Sefer Iyov. What was the book of Job? So the book of Job, the book of Iyov, we know, is a deal is made between God and the devil. And the devil says that I guarantee you I can get Iyov to go against God, curse God, to go against God and not keep his mitzvot. And God said, you can do anything you want. I'll take that bet. And you can do anything you want to him, his family, to him physically, to his parnasa, to his everything, with the exception of killing him. And we'll see who wins the bet. So we know, of course, that he wins the bet. God does. Parenthetically, the Gemara discusses if Eov really ever existed. He may not have. It may just be one large parable. I say large, it's long. I think it's 24 chapters. It's also very depressing. So if nothing to do on Tisha B'Av next year, which will be a Chag anyways, be a Yontif, be a holiday. But in case it's not, God forbid, you can read the book of Eov. You have nothing else to do. Anyways, so what does it mean, tzaddik v'ralo? Is the classic when bad things happen to good people. Why is it? This guy is such a tzaddik, and he goes and he serves God, and he puts on tefillin, and he davens, and he helps people, does gemilu chasadim, v'ralo, and still bad for him. Things go wrong. And why is he got these schnooks who cheat people in business, and they're ganavim, and they do all kinds of bad things. They're Russia, v'tovlo, and it's good for them in this world. That's the normal discussion of when you say to somebody, tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo. It's a philosophical question in Judaism. And here, meaning in the beginning of the book, when he quotes the Gemara, it seems to indicate something completely different. What it seems to indicate? That it's tzaddik v'tovlo, which is over here. He translates in another way. It's called tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik, a person who's completely righteous. And tzaddik v'ralo, a tzaddik who, whatever it means in English, is a tzaddik she'eno gamur, is an incomplete tzaddik. Now, first of all, what does it mean to be an incomplete tzaddik? What does it mean to be a complete tzaddik? And why tovlo and ralo, good for him and bad for him? So that's what we posed these questions about 9 months ago. But who's counting? We started in December, started at Hanukkah time, so 9 months ago, almost exactly since we started. We're about to start chapter 10, so about a parak a month, a chapter a month. And we said we're going to have to wait and see what he's talking about. And until we can actually understand what he's talking about, we had to build a case. Now, because I'm giving you this background, it should be obvious that when this next chapter we're going to do in chapter 10, it's going to talk about this subject of a tzaddik, of a righteous person. It's going to give us these definitions in this chapter. What does it mean, tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik? What does it mean to be a tzaddik she'eno gamur, incomplete? But the only way we could possibly understand what these terms mean, as far as the Baal HaTanya is concerned, is if we had chapters 7, 8, and 9 before it. You'll see why that builds. That's why I told you many times, there's no way you can pick up Tanya, just pick up a chapter and read it. And you can understand some of it, but because one chapter leads to the next, and you need them as building blocks. Now, in order to understand a couple more things in the beginning of the chapter, I want to read you 2 psukim. You may be familiar with the 2 psukim. We say this one on Shabbat morning, the David b'shanoto et ta'amo lifnei Avimelech. Forget the whole background to the whole thing, how David pretends to be someone who's not and runs away. But these 2 words, the next 2 words are important. Vayigarashehu, he sent him away, vayelach, and he went. These 2 words are going to be used by the Baal HaTanya in a different meaning, but you have to understand what the pasuk is in general. Vayigarashehu, he sent him away, vayelach, where Avimelech sends away David HaMelech. Okay, for whatever reason. That's one pasuk you're going to need to know. The second pasuk deals with the concept of when witnesses testify that a person did something terrible that was deserving of the death penalty, and all the conditions are met, which are very, very rare, if not almost impossible, for an actual death penalty to be instituted. So it says as follows: Who's the first one to first begin the execution? It is the witnesses themselves. And then all the rest of the people. Here's the key that we need to know for tonight. This phrase is used multiple times in the Torah. It literally means, and you shall destroy the evil from amongst you. So we say in this context that a person who was a murderer, for example, who deserved the death penalty, when he gets executed, we have eradicated the evil from amongst the Jewish people. Okay? All that serves as a bit of background to us understanding this next chapter, beginning of the chapter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the chapter on the screen, beginning of it at least. Let me make it a little bigger. And what we'll do, Let me pull it down a little. And what we're going to do is after I read the beginning, I'm going to put on the screen an English summary, not translation, but English summary. Okay, so let's just start with this chapter. V'shem Hashem naseh v'natzliach. V'hinei, starting the beginning line. Kishadam magbir nafsho elokit. When a person strengthens their nefesh elokit. Remember last chapter, we talked about nefesh elokit based in the mind. Last few chapters. Nefesh bahamit based in the heart. Each one's goal to rule over the other. Itkafya, ithapcha, to completely transform the other one. When a person is able to strengthen their nefesh elokit, v'nilcham kol kach im habahamit, and he gets into a war with his nefesh habahamit, seated in the left side of the heart, ad shemegaresh umevaer hara sheba, to the point where he eradicates the evil and destroys the evil that is found mechalal hasmali, which is found in the left side of the heart, which we saw in the last chapter. Kamoshe katuv, as it says in the pasuk, uviata ra mikirbecha. Now the Rebbe, the Tanya, uses this pasuk to tell us not just its words that you will eradicate the evil from amongst you, meaning the getting rid of a murderer from among Klal Yisrael, but it means that we have eradicated, or a person has eradicated the evil from inside himself. It's singular. Uviarta, you will eradicate hara, the evil, mikirbecha, that's inside of you. If a person is able to do that, remember, talk about this war, this battle between the nefesh elokit and nefesh bahamit. Its goal of the nefesh elokit is the transformation of the nefesh bahamit. If you are in this war and you're able to eradicate the evil, but ve'ein hara nehefach letov mamash, you have not yet successfully, completely transformed the evil in the nefesh bahamit completely to be good. Nikra tzaddik she'eno gamur. He's called a tzaddik that is imperfect. The tzaddik v'ralo, and that's what the Gemara refers to when it talks about tzaddik v'ralo. I'm explaining this all in a minute. Let me finish reading another couple lines. Dahainu, this means to say, I'm right here, right after the bold words. Dahainu sheyesh bo adayin me'at mize'era b'chalal ha'smali. He still does have a shred of evil in his heart, in that left side of his heart. Ela shekafuf ubatel datov. It's there, but it's still subservient to the good, and it's batel. It's considered almost nullified, but it's there. Mahmat mi'uto. Because of the small amount that's there, it's still considered negligible. Therefore, nidmelo, it appears to himself, ki vayigarsheo vayilachlo, that his bad part, his nefesh bahamit, has completely gone away. Legamre, completely. Aval be'emet, but in actuality, ilu chalaf halachlo legamre, if it truly had gone away completely, kol hara shebo haya nefach letov mamash, then if it had completely gone away, then everything that was inside of him in his nefesh bahamit, located this left side of the heart, there'll be not even a shred of evil. Okay. A lot of talking, a lot of words. Let's go off a screen share for a minute and talk. It means like this. He's giving us a completely new definition of the words tzaddik v'ralo. An evil, a good person or a righteous person, that things are bad for him. Again, we use that colloquially to mean that when someone is doing the right things in this world, yet they still seem to have things go wrong for them. They get, God forbid, in a car accident, they get sick, whatever it might be. But he's telling us a different example or a different translation of meaning. When the Gemara tells us that there's a concept of tzaddik v'ralo, it means it's a tzaddik she'eno gamur. It's an incomplete tzaddik. What makes him incomplete? He has been able to transform almost his entire nefesh bahamit, but there remains a shred of something evil. And in his mind, it may even seem that he has completely transformed it. But if there's still, and we'll see what that means. What does that mean? There's still a little bit of evil. We'll see what that means soon. And that point, what he does not yet have 100% rule over his nefesh bahamit, he's still considered, and he's a tzaddik. but he's not yet a complete tzaddik. This action, this shred of ra, is considered almost, if you express, the expression batal b'shishim. You drop a drop of milk into a meat pot, and there's more than 60 times the milk, you can eat it because it's considered nullified. It's considered as if it's not there. And in a sense, from what the person feels about himself, it's probably batal also. That little bit of ra that's still in there, what that is, again, we'll get to in a minute. Nevertheless, says the Balatanya, he's still considered tzaddik v'ralo / tzaddik sheino gamur, an incomplete tzaddik. So at this point, we have one side of the coin so far. We've just now defined, but not with all the details, we've defined what does it mean, tzaddik sheino gamur, an incomplete tzaddik. Let's take a look before we continue the text. Let's now take a look at slide from Rav Steinsaltz. Let's go down. Come on. We'll come back to this in a minute. Oops, this is what I want. Okay, make it a little smaller. Tov. He tells us the following very important statement. Bein tzaddik gamur, the tzaddik sheino gamur, the difference between a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik, eino hevdel chitzoni. First, we have to understand it is absolutely not an external difference. Klape chutz, as far as when you see the person from the outside, hein b'maaseh, hein b'dibur, v'hein b'machshava, and kol hevdel b'neihem. Whether it comes to thought, speech, or action, you take two tzaddikim next to each other, tzaddik sheino gamur, the incomplete tzaddik, and tzaddik gamur, complete tzaddik, you will not be able to tell the difference because they are not external differences. When you see a person whose all their actions are all the level of holiness, he can be a tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik. You could possibly be a tzaddik that's not gamur, but incomplete. Or he could even be, as it will be said in the continuation, a person who hasn't even reached the level of tzaddik, meaning the Benoni. Meaning, he tells us now something important, that outwardly, the tzaddik gamur, the tzaddik sheino gamur, and potentially even the Benoni, the average person, which we haven't defined yet, even though this book's audience is the Benoni, we're now almost 10 chapters in, and we still don't have the complete definition of Benoni. Nevertheless, that's on the outside, they all look the same. I have del hu efo, therefore the difference is del pnimi. It's an internal difference. It's not recognizable to the eye. Not only that, it's not only is it not recognizable from the outside when a person's talking to someone, watching someone, it may not even be recognizable internally to the person himself. A person cannot always know. A person cannot always know. I might even say never know, but I don't know. When he is truly overpowered, his good over his evil side. The difference between the perfect and the imperfect tzaddik. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. Never mind. Up to this period. That's where I want to get to. That's why I chopped it off in the middle of the sentence. So far what we have is the definition of tzaddik sheino gamur, or the tzaddik v'ralo. That's this first paragraph here. Now I'm going to go into the second paragraph where it says ube'ur ha'inyan. I'll make the slide a little bigger. Okay. Ube'ur ha'inyan. To understand what he just said, we first need to understand what is the tzaddik gamur. In other words, he just defined to us what is the tzaddik sheino gamur. But now, in order to really understand what a tzaddik sheino gamur is, or an imperfect tzaddik, we have to understand what a perfect tzaddik is. Ube'ur ha'inyan ki hinei tzaddik gamur. What is a tzaddik gamur? I bolded it. Shenehafach hara shelo l'tov, that his evil, any shred of evil, in quotes, in his heart, in his nefesh habahamit, has been completely transformed to good. That's why he's called tzaddik v'tovlo. That things are, doesn't mean things are good for him, means that everything is good. He has removed, in a spiritual sense, all the filthy garments of evil from his body. Dahainu, which means lim'os me'od b'ta'anugei olam hazeh, to be completely disgusted by all the pleasures and joys of this world. I'm going to see what that actually means, so hold on. What does that mean? He's completely disgusted by the pleasures of this world. He's disgusted by the pleasures of this world when they're used only for the pleasure of this world and not for avodat Hashem. Meaning, if it's just stam to eat to fill your stomach, he's disgusted by that. But it's to eat because you're going to be feeling you're healthy, and you're going to be doing because it's oneg Shabbat, and you want to be able to serve Hashem. All those things combined, that he's not disgusted by, that he's drawn to. Because when you do it for your own desires, for your own ta'avot, you're doing it because it's being driven and being influenced by the klipa and the sitracha, which are terms we've used hundreds of times already. And therefore, anything that is based on sitra achra, right over here I am, has an ultimate hatred for it. Anything that's driven by sitra achra, a tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik, is repulsed by it. Due to his great love of God. Remember, we talked about this level of love. We talked about the two types of love. The burning love, which is we talked about, and the avarabah, which is the calm love, which is the one where the hitaneg b'Hashem, the chiba yitera hanal, which we mentioned already. Okay, so what is he telling us? That we have the tzaddik gamur not only has been able to eradicate all the evil on the side of the nefesh habahamit, but he also is repulsed by anything that might pop up that has any connection to sitra achra, has any connection whatsoever to klipa. Kihem ze lu'umat ze, because they are two opposites. What are the two things that are the opposite? Love and hate. What is he telling us in those few words? Listen really carefully. Every single thing that a tzaddik gamur does, every single thing, he does out of love of Hashem. Not driven by sitra achra, not driven by klipa. And not only that, should anything well up in him come up that has a shred or scintilla of being brought to the fore because of sitra achra, klipa, he hates it. Why? Because it's the opposite of this love of Hashem. If he's doing everything out of love of Hashem, he can't do it for his own purpose. He can't do it that there's an ego involved. He can't do it because the klipa, the sitra achra is involved. So therefore, the sitra achra and the klipa aspect of an action is the mortal enemy, so to speak, of the tzaddik gamur, of the complete tzaddik. Ki dichtiv, as it says, tachlit sinas natem leoivim ayu lo chokrani v'dalevavi. If you look at my heart, you will see my ultimate love and sina of things that are not kedusha. What does that pasuk mean? If a person would be able to look into the heart and the mind, but more importantly in this case, the heart, because he's now replaced the heart, the nefesh habahamit, with the nefesh elokit, that person would be able to have this special CAT scan. They can look at the heart in this way. Again, we're talking metaphorically, we're talking spiritually. They would see it completely 100% dedicated and devoted to Hashem with love. and every action driven by love of God, and only doing an action because Hashem said it has to be done. And that if there would ever be this little bubble that would pop to the surface that would have anything to do with Sitra Achra, that means personal driven and ego-driven action. I'm giving the guy tzedakah because I want to feel good about it. I want to give it because I feel bad that he doesn't have money. Anything like that, it's the automatic drive of the tzaddik gamur, the perfect tzaddik, is that gets not only completely transformed into good, but he also feels the hatred for it before he even has this action overpower it and then to transform it to good. Meaning that this pasuk means that he just quoted, it says tachlit sina, that if you could actually look into this person's heart, if you could look into your heart, you would, into my heart, not me, you would see the ultimate love of God and the sin'ah, the hatred of anything not kedusha. Now, before I continue, I want to show you something in English. I'm going to read it slowly, even though it's in English, because it's still a little bit hard to process sometimes. After elaborating in the previous chapter the ongoing battle between the divine and animal soul over mastery of a Jew's body, the Alter Rebbe, Tanya, now proceeds to explain that one who vanquishes his animal soul and transforms its evil into good, is a tzaddik. This level of tzaddik, now remember, let's back up a second before I read the next thing. Once you've transformed, you've used your nefesh elokit to transform your nefesh bahamit, that already brands you a tzaddik. But what kind of tzaddik? This level of tzaddik comprises two general categories. The perfect tzaddik, also called the tzaddik who knows only good, meaning tzaddik v'tov lo. He's who transformed all the evil of his animal soul to good. While he who has not completely eradicated and converted the evil within him, he's still a tzaddik. But he's called an imperfect tzaddik, or a tzaddik who possesses some vestige of evil. Continuing. Next slide. Thank you. The difference between the two sets of descriptive terms, complete and incomplete tzaddik, and the tzaddik who knows only good or who knows evil, is as follows. The former set describes the degree of the tzaddik's love of God. For it is this love that earns him the title tzaddik. In the case of the complete tzaddik, it is a complete and perfect love, while the love of the incomplete tzaddik is imperfect. The latter set of terms refers to the conversion of the animal soul's evil to good. An individual in whom it has been entirely transformed is termed a tzaddik who knows only good, whereas one whom a vestige of evil remains is termed a tzaddik who knows evil. It doesn't mean he is evil. God forbid, because he is a tzaddik. But because there's still a vestige, a shred that you might think is batal b'shishim, that's considered completely nullified, it's there. It's a tzaddik who still has a knowledge of evil. There's still part of him that has something in him. He cannot be considered a complete tzaddik. It goes without saying that evil in this context refers only to promptings of evil that may be harbored in his heart, not, of course, to actual evil expressed in thought, speech, or action. Because if he actually expressed it, spoke lashon hara, he thought about avodah zarah, he ate something treif, that's not a tzaddik v'ralo. That's a rasha. It's a person who's evil. He did something wrong. So it's very important to understand this. When we looked at this very first slide, let's go back to it for a minute. This one. When we quoted the beginning of the book of the two different types of tzaddik v'ralo and tzaddik v'tovlo, we said one was called a tzaddik gamur, one's called tzaddik she'eno gamur. Complete tzaddik and an incomplete. What did that mean? We had no idea. Now we have a better understanding up to this point in this chapter. On the one hand, the tzaddik gamur, who has completely not only transformed his nefesh bahamit, but there's not even a shred of anything, quote unquote, evil in there, evil thought, evil intention, evil drive. And tzaddik gamur, which is also called a tzaddik v'tovlo, is that person who has completely transformed his nefesh bahamit. There's not a shred of ra, and then any influence that may pop in is hated and transformed bozmanit at the same time. Okay. Let me see something. I'm going to read one more sentence, and that's all. Let's go back to the text. Here, right near the bottom here, where it says Uchafi Erech. I'm near the bottom of the page now. I'm going to read one more sentence. Uchafi Erech Godel Aval Hashem, commensurate with the amount of love that one has for Hashem. Kach Erech Godel Hasinah L'Sitra Achra. So too is that increase the amount of hatred that that person would have towards the Sitra Achra, and the amount of repulsion of the evil. Because repulsion is the exact opposite of love, mamash, like hatred. Okay, what does this mean? Let's talk in terms of just things that we can all understand. If a person has a child, their own child, standing in front of them, and they have another child who's a neighbor's child standing in front of them, and God forbid someone comes to attack the children, whom does that child, which child gets protected first? I may love my neighbors, I may love my neighbors' kids almost like my own, but tachlis, I'm going to protect my own first. And therefore my anger, my hatred towards the guy who's coming to attack them, and my protection and my overwhelming love, which is stronger for my own child, is that much stronger against the person who's coming against, and therefore I will protect that child against that. If someone's coming to attack a child, not mine, I will of course feel a hatred for that person. I'll do whatever I can to protect that child. But you know yourself, whether it's your child, it's your spouse, it's your brother, it's your sister, that innate love that you have that comes by dint of being blood relatives, close blood relatives, is a much stronger love, and therefore the desire to eradicate that which is coming to destroy that which you love is even stronger. So he's telling us that not only is there a level of a tzaddik v'ralo and a tzaddik v'tovlo, or a tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik, but that even with the complete tzaddik, there's another gradation. One whose love is greater for Hashem, and therefore the hatred of the Sitra Achra is even greater. And one whose love for Hashem is at a different level, and the hatred of the Sitra Achra is at that level. Doesn't make him less of a tzaddik. Although we'll see that there are, right now it sounds like there's just one or two levels. When we get a little bit further into the book, you'll see that there are almost infinite levels for every single one. Tzaddik, Beinoni, Rasha, almost infinite levels. Okay, here's the deal. We got a lot done, Baruch Hashem. We covered a lot of ground. We need still to, in the next part of this chapter, which we're not going to do now, he's going to drill down a little bit more for us to understand these two terms. When we finish this chapter, will be at least another couple of classes, if not more. He's going to turn his topic to the Rasha, because remember, that same quote I gave you at the beginning of chapter 1, there was a second part, which I didn't quote, which is the concept of Rasha v'tovlo, Rasha v'ralo. We have this concept. It didn't get into it, at least. He will get into that in the next chapter, chapter 11. And then chapter 12, he'll finally start talking about the Beinoni. Now, I want to go back to something I said when we started this book. And I said a little bit earlier, this book works with building blocks. It works with giving us step-by-step information. Sometimes the information is a little deep. Sometimes it's very understandable. Sometimes it may not make sense now, but only makes sense later. We will, if you remember, if you have the book itself, you'll remember that it says, this is called Likutei Amarim, Chelek Rishon. This is the first volume of the compilation of statements. Hanikra b'shem Sefer Shel Beinoni. This is known as the book of the Beinoni, the book of the average person. What we have not yet discussed, what is the Beinoni? Not only have we not discussed what the Beinoni is, we said what it isn't already in the beginning of the book, which we're going to go back to. So it's not going to be until we get to chapter 12, we're going to really start finding out. But in order to define the Beinoni, we can only do it when we first understand what is a Rasha and its various levels, and what is the Tzaddik and its various levels. And those are these building blocks over the next few weeks. So Bezrat Hashem, let me take a quick look. Today is Tuesday, correct? Good. So let's take a quick look. Make sure. Okay, that night I don't have a wedding. Baruch Hashem. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Sorry. We will not be meeting next week. I have a wedding. We'll maybe do it a different night if I can. Otherwise, we'll just push it up to the following week. So next week, I'll send out a notice. There is no class on Tuesday. I will not be here. Bezat Hashem be at a wedding. Then we'll figure it out from there. Meantime, have a wonderful evening. I hope your brain doesn't hurt. If you understand the reference to Monty Python, my brain hurts. That's very cool. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Great class.
Thank you.